Okay, I figured out exactly what's going on, and it's much gayer than you actually think. Alright, bear with me because I'm going to do a little bit of over-explaining. I used to be really gay and study Kabbalah. However, let me make one thing very clear: Christ is king. But one of the main reasons why I studied Kabbalah was so that way I could identify what was happening in the world by people who use Kabbalah, including these two guys and their friends. This being Benjamin Netanyahu as well as Donald Trump. Long story short, in Kabbalah, there is a understanding or a teaching that there is supposed to be two Jewish messiahs. One being Messiah ben Joseph and one being Messiah ben David. Now I'm going to cut straight to the chase and then I'm going to explain further. They believe that this is Mashiach ben Joseph and that is Mashiach ben David. And these two are actively tag teaming to make this prophecy come true. That does not make it biblical or divine, it is just self-fulfilling prophecy. So what's the difference between the two Jewish messiahs? Well, for starters, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. There is actually religious Zionists, the Hardali, and even Christian Zionist communities that actually promote this idea. And they believe that this is unfolding in real time today, with Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Essentially, the concept for Mashiach ben Joseph is the physical/military role, which they've given to Benjamin Netanyahu. Where, as you can see here, they're essentially propping up this war as a holy war that is against Amalek, which is tied to the Kabbalistic idea of this version of the Mashiach just constantly battling Amalek, and we always hear Benjamin Netanyahu talking about Amalek. And then also is supposed to be the guy that secures the land and physically protects the Jewish people while this war happens. And we've constantly heard them talking about peace. We'll get more into that later. Then they attribute this to Donald Trump as Mashiach ben David because not only do they see him as a King Cyrus figure, essentially a non-Jewish leader who uses his power to restore Jewish sovereignty over Jerusalem and potentially facilitate the rebuilding of the Third Temple. So this is where it gets really gay, and they use gematria from Kabbalah systems, where when you take the numerical value of Mashiach ben David in Hebrew, it gets a numerical value of 424, the same thing as Donald Trump in gematria. So they're like, oy vey, this is Mashiach ben David. Which, as you can see, Mashiach ben David has a numerical value of 424, which again is super gay and doesn't make any logical sense because when you take my name and transliterate it over into Hebrew, you literally get the same number, and I'm not Mashiach ben David. And that's the problem with getting into Kabbalah, is that people that take it way too seriously start to take it way too seriously and get full of themselves. Anyways, let's talk about Trump's Board of Peace and how it fits this concept of Mashiach ben David according to Kabbalah prophecy. So Mashiach ben David is supposed to usher in universal peace and also has a permanent role, which is exactly what's happening with the Board of Peace. Now, I'm not making the same claim that a lot of other people are making about how Donald Trump is the Antichrist and the Board of Peace is tied to it. It's just really funny and really gay to me to see someone openly trying to make something fulfilled, where Trump and his administration are literally promoting this as Armageddon. As the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, U.S. troops were told war on Iran was all part of God's divine plan, Watchdog alleges. However, since I'm best friends with Benjamin Netanyahu now, I'm going to be the good guy and actually say what's probably going to happen. Because somebody needs to be a friend to both of these guys and let them know how silly they look. For one, I wouldn't want to be playing the role of Mashiach ben Yosef because he dies. He literally dies in the prophecy. And then Mashiach ben David is supposed to live on forever, which he has the forever role in his Board of Peace. But let me tell you about what happens if this plan fails. Which more than likely it will, because Trump is literally just following the same exact path as Julian the Apostate. And if he's trying to fulfill this role of Mashiach ben David and building the Third Temple, Julian the Apostate attempted the exact same thing and failed miserably. The number one reason being is because Julian was trying to undermine Christianity and Christ's authority, where the destruction of the Second Temple was a prophecy fulfilled about Christ's rulership. However, it is a permanent destruction. There is to be no Third Temple whatsoever. When Julian the Apostate tried to do it, literally an earthquake happened and fireballs were shooting from the ground, and the people that were working on it abandoned the project. They were doing it to try to disprove Christ's authority and prophecy. However, it failed miserably, and they never did it because of natural disasters, thus justifying Christians' faith at the time period, strengthening the Christian faith, and then also making a fool out of the Jewish leaders that literally influenced Julian the Apostate. So if this fails, the spiritual crisis is going to be basically the first thing. They've been indoctrinating their entire community of Jewish people that this is the prophetic moment. This is the end times. That Netanyahu is going to protect them from Amalek and all this other nonsense. But if he fails and it backfires on them, this is going to be extremely detrimental on the Jewish faith because Israel is already secular and non-religious anyways and has their doubts. Like literally the vast majority of Israelis are non-religious or secular. However, the religious right are trying to prove something. Therefore, they have a lot of money and they have a lot of faith invested into this entire project. And it's going to be even worse than when Shabtai Zvi was claiming that he was the Jewish Messiah. Shabtai Zvi literally convinced 2/3 of the Jewish population that he was the Messiah at that time. However, when he converted over to Islam, they literally were so distraught by this that they stopped believing in God altogether, thus creating secular Judaism that led to Jacob Frank and then Sabbatian Frankism, which leads into Reform Judaism and Zionism and everything else that most people don't like today. Or they'll attempt to do exactly what Shabtai Zvi did and move the goalpost. However, that doesn't match the rhetoric that they've literally been telling an entire group of people, raising children and generations up, teaching them that this is what's going to happen. Like, they've literally been teaching this stuff to their children for generations, and now they are self-fulfilling this prophecy. Not to mention the massive amounts of money that's been donated to fund these projects. They are literally looking at it as investments. Massive amounts of money have been donated to organizations preparing for the temple, settling the West Bank, and funding red heifer projects. If they don't fulfill the protection of this, then it's going to be a bad investment, and they're not going to be very happy. I literally just noticed how in parentheses and then in quotations it said settled the land. Anyways, it says many have moved to specific areas of Israel based on the belief that the Messianic age is starting. A political collapse could lead to property devaluation, forced evacuations, or loss of livelihoods. The religious Zionist parties that tied their entire identity to Netanyahu could lose their mandate, leading to a massive shift in Israeli internal power and a potential culture war against the religious right. So basically, there is a lot of money. We're talking trillions of dollars of investment that has gone into this bullshit messianic prophecy, Kabbalistic end of the world nonsense. And they are sugarcoating it by trying to sell it to evangelical Christians to fund and help fund and continue to fund this nonsense. By tricking them with dispensationalism, thinking that if they do this and the third temple's built, then that means that Jesus is going to return. However, that's one big trick just to get them to literally fund projects and to buy into things and to freely give over our tax dollars to literally fulfill a Kabbalistic nonsense prophecy. And it is so gay. It is so gay. It is literally so gay. And I believe that the Lord Jesus Christ is 1000% God and is very, very consistent when it comes to judgment. So this project is destined to fail and to basically be the exact same thing that happened to Julian the Apostate. Trump is only concerned about his legacy in American politics as well as Israeli messianicship or whatever. Trump wants to be remembered forever like King Cyrus, who is noted inside of the Bible and his name lives forever. Trump wants to be King Cyrus. Trump wants to build the third temple just like Cyrus built that temple. However, Jesus made it very clear the destruction of the second temple is permanent. And he proved this to be true with Julian the Apostate, who attempted to do the exact same thing with Jewish influence, and it utterly failed. And the irony of the situation is that Julian the Apostate literally lost his life while he was going to attempt to conquer what is now modern-day Iran. I can't make this stuff up. They actively think that they can outsmart God because they've had 1,600 years of planning to this very moment. So they are going to be extremely passionate and make sure that everything goes according to plan. However, when it comes time to meet God, they are going to fail miserably. Christ is King. I love you all. Have a very blessed Armageddon, Doomsday, whatever. Blessed are all of we to be living in this time period to witness this utter failure that's about to happen. I love you all. God bless.